The morning started like any other Tuesday. People grabbed coffee, rushed to work, complained about traffic. Nobody expected the sky to tear open. The Kazith harvest fleet dropped through Earth's atmosphere without warning. Massive ships, each one the size of a city block, descended over every major population center across the globe. Their metal hulls gleamed in the sunlight, casting shadows that swallowed entire neighborhoods. Inside the command vessel hovering over Manhattan, Commander Vexthor studied his scanning screens with the bored satisfaction of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. 7.8 billion specimens. All perfectly suited for labor colonies across the Dominion. The data classified humans as Class 7 primitives, barely worth the fuel costs, really. Their weapons were laughable. Chemical propulsion. Kinetic projectiles. No energy shields. No plasma technology. Nothing that could threaten a Kazith soldier's armor. This would be over in hours, maybe less. Vexthor had conquered 43 worlds in his career. Earth would be number 44. The landing ships touched down simultaneously in New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, and dozens of other cities. The plan was simple and had worked every single time. Land, activate the neural pacification field, watch the primitives collapse into mindless obedience, then herd them into the transport ships. Easy. Profitable. Done. Vexthor activated the field with a casual tap of his claw. The effect was immediate. Humans within a half-mile radius stumbled. Their legs buckled. Some fell to their knees, gasping. The neural waves scrambled their motor functions, flooded their brains with artificial calm, stripped away their will to resist. Vexthor watched through his view screen, waiting for the usual scene, thousands of primitives standing docile and empty-eyed, ready for collection. That's when Jake Martinez did something impossible. The young soldier from the 101st Airborne had been on patrol near Times Square when the ships appeared. The neural field hit him like a sledgehammer to the brain. His vision blurred. His legs gave out. He crashed to one knee, his rifle clattering on the pavement. For a moment, everything went fuzzy and distant. Then something burned through the haze. Maybe it was training. Maybe it was pure stubborn human spite. Maybe it was the thought of his little sister back home in Texas. Whatever it was, Jake felt it ignite in his chest like a fire. He stood back up, raised his rifle, and fired. "Sir, they're not breaking," the tactical officer reported, his voice cracking with something that might have been fear. "The neural field, it's not working. They're still fighting." Vexthor's mandibles clicked in confusion. Impossible. The field had broken species 10 times more advanced than these apes. Yet on the screen he watched human after human shake off the effects and return to combat positions. 3 blocks away, Captain Rachel Stone of the U.S. Army shook her head clear and immediately started yelling orders. She'd trained for invasion scenarios her entire career. Russian, Chinese, North Korean, terrorist. Never aliens. But watching those massive ships land and seeing her people drop like puppets, she made a split-second decision that would save thousands of lives. Get civilians to the tunnels. Move, move, move. Her voice carried over the chaos. Delta Team, flank left. Charlie, I want suppressing fire on that landing ramp. Somebody get me heavy weapons. The Kazith deployed their collection teams, armored soldiers designed to herd and contain primitives. They marched down the landing ramps in perfect formation, energy weapons ready, confident in their superiority. They walked straight into hell. Marine Sergeant Tom Briggs had served 3 tours in the Middle East. He knew urban combat. He knew how to fight a bigger, stronger enemy. And he sure as hell knew how to find weak points. His squad took cover behind overturned cars and opened fire. The first bursts bounced off alien armor. But Tom noticed something. The joints where the plates connected, there was a gap. "Aim for the joints," he roared. Knees, elbows, neck seals. Bullets found their marks. Kazith soldiers stumbled. Fall. Blue blood leaked onto the pavement. The invincible aliens weren't so invincible after all. Vexthor stared at his casualty reports in disbelief. 17 soldiers down. 23. 41. The numbers kept climbing. "They're supposed to be primitive," he hissed, slamming his claw against the console. 5 miles away in a warehouse district, combat engineer Kelly Robinson finished wiring the last explosive charge. She'd been preparing the city's infrastructure for potential terrorist attacks, standard protocol post 9/11. Now those preparations served a different purpose. She watched through binoculars as a full Kazith collection squad entered the warehouse, scanning for hiding humans. Kelly pressed the detonator. The explosion lit up the skyline. The warehouse collapsed in a fireball that consumed every alien inside. Kelly allowed herself a grim smile, dust settling on her face. "Welcome to Earth," she whispered, already moving to the next position. Across the planet, similar stories played out. In London, Manchester. In Berlin, Paris. In Moscow, Beijing, Delhi. Everywhere the Kazith landed, they expected submission. What they got was war. Commander Vex Thor made his first major decision of the invasion. He called for reinforcements. This primitive world, this easy harvest, had just become a real fight. 2 weeks. That's all it took for Commander Vex Thor to realize he'd made the worst mistake of his 3,000-year career. The Kazith Dominion had conquered 43 worlds without breaking a sweat. Earth was supposed to be number 44. An easy job. A simple harvest. Instead, it had become a nightmare. The humans didn't fight like any primitive species the Dominion had ever encountered. They didn't panic. They didn't scatter. They didn't beg for mercy. They fought with a calculated viciousness that made Vex Thor's blood run cold. Every engagement was a lesson in brutal efficiency. Every battle cost him soldiers he couldn't replace fast enough. These humans fought like they'd been born for war. Lieutenant James Cooper lay flat on the roof of a collapsed office building in downtown Chicago, his eye pressed against the scope of his sniper rifle. The city was a graveyard now, shattered glass, burned-out cars, bodies buried under rubble. But it was his graveyard, and he knew every inch of it. Through his scope, he watched a Kazith walker patrol the street below. The machine stood 3 stories tall, its 4 legs stomping craters into the asphalt. Energy weapons bristled from its chassis. 2 alien soldiers piloted it from a protected cockpit. The walker had been terrorizing survivors for 3 days, and James had been tracking it for 2. "Beth, you seeing this?" he whispered into his radio, barely breathing. 2 blocks east, hidden in the skeleton of a parking garage, Staff Sergeant Beth Williams adjusted her own scope. She'd been James's spotter for 6 years, through 2 deployments overseas. They'd taken out targets from over a mile away. An alien walker at 300 yards? That was practically point blank. "I see it," she confirmed, her voice steady. "Power coupling on the left rear leg. About 6 inches below the joint. You hit that, the whole leg system shuts down." James tracked the target. Slowed his breathing. Felt his heartbeat. Between beats, he squeezed the trigger. 1 shot. 1 bullet. Nothing fancy, just a .50 caliber round traveling at 2,800 feet per second. The power coupling exploded in a shower of sparks. The walker's leg buckled. The machine crashed onto its side with a sound like thunder, cracking the street. Before the crew could react, resistance fighters swarmed from the surrounding buildings. They dragged the aliens out and captured everything: weapons, equipment, communications gear. "Good shot," Beth said simply. "Good call," James replied. They were already moving to their next position. 3,000 miles west, in the sewers beneath Los Angeles, a different kind of battle was being fought. Mike Walsh wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grease. Before the invasion, he'd designed propulsion systems for NASA. Now he was hunched in a tunnel that smelled like decades of waste, taking apart alien technology with a crowbar and a screwdriver. Beside him, Lisa Turner, formerly a lead engineer at SpaceX, held a flashlight steady while muttering calculations under her breath. Between them lay a captured Kazith plasma rifle, its components spread across a plastic tarp. "This doesn't make sense," Lisa said, pointing at a glowing crystal embedded in the weapon's core. "The energy output should melt the entire rifle. How are they containing it?" Mike peered closer. "Magnetic field. See these coils? They're generating a containment field. The crystal generates the plasma, the field shapes and contains it, and this trigger mechanism releases it in controlled bursts. So it's not magic. It's never magic. It's just engineering we haven't seen yet." Mike grinned despite their situation. "And if we can figure out how it works, we can make our own," Lisa finished. It took them 4 more hours working by flashlight in a sewer, but they did it. They figured out the principles. Within days, the information spread through encrypted networks to every resistance cell on the planet. Human engineers and mechanics and garage tinkerers started modifying the captured weapons. Soon, fighters who'd been using hunting rifles and pistols carried weapons that hummed with alien energy and fired bolts of superheated plasma. The Kazith had brought advanced technology to Earth. Humans just stole it and made it work better. Colonel Ryan Hayes stood in what used to be a Kazith supply depot outside Denver. His team had spent a week planning this operation. They'd infiltrated during a shift change, eliminated the guards silently, and planted enough explosives to level a city block. But before he blew it all to hell, Ryan wanted to send a message. He activated a captured communicator and broadcast on the Kazith military frequency. His galactic common was rough, learned from interrogating prisoners, but he made sure every word was clear. This is Colonel Ryan Hayes of the United States Army. You came to our planet thinking we were weak, thinking we'd just lie down and let you take us. You made a mistake. He paused, looking at the rows of supplies and equipment about to go up in flames. You came for slaves. You're gonna leave in body bags. Every single one of you. He cut the transmission. Everyone out, he ordered his team. They ran. The explosives detonated in a carefully timed sequence. The supply depot vanished in a fireball visible for 20 miles. 3 harvest ships parked nearby caught fire and burned through the night, pillars of smoke rising into the sky like funeral pyres. In orbit, aboard his flagship, Commander Vex Thor watched the fires burn. His mandibles trembled. He'd requested reinforcements 2 days ago. Now he escalated the request to Priority 1 and added a single word to his report that no Kazith commander had ever used about a primitive species. Dangerous. Month 2 brought a new level of hell. Commander Vex Thor made a decision that had crushed 100 rebellions before. If the humans wanted to hide in their cities, he'd simply erase the cities. The Dominion deployed orbital bombardment, massive energy weapons that could level entire city blocks from space. Buildings turned to rubble. Streets became craters. Fires burned for days. The Kazith expected mass casualties. They expected the humans to break, to flood their communication channels with pleas for mercy, to finally surrender like every other species had done when faced with annihilation from above. Instead, the humans just disappeared. They went underground. Into subway tunnels. Into storm drains. Into basement complexes and parking garages and sewers. Into Cold War-era bunkers that had been waiting for nuclear war. Into mine shafts and caves and anywhere the alien scanners couldn't reach. Millions of people vanished into the Earth itself, and the bombardment hit nothing but empty buildings. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker complex built to survive nuclear war, General David Foster commanded humanity's resistance. The command center hummed with activity, dozens of operators at computer stations, encrypted communications flowing in from cells across the planet, tactical displays showing enemy positions. The main screen showed Earth like a living organism fighting an infection. Thousands of tiny dots, each one representing a resistance cell, operating independently across every continent. Some dots were bright, active operations. Others pulsed slowly, cells in hiding, waiting for the right moment. The pattern looked chaotic, but there was beauty in it. Intelligence. Evolution. Sir, Chicago cell just hit another supply convoy, an operator reported. Boston cell took out a communication relay. Los Angeles reports 3 Walker units disabled. David studied the display with satisfaction. They can't bomb what they can't find, he told his staff. And we're everywhere. Every city, every town, every tunnel system. They'd have to glass the entire planet to get us all, and then they'd have nothing left to enslave. He'd been fighting wars for 30 years. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. He'd learned a crucial lesson early on. You can't defeat an enemy that refuses to stand still and fight on your terms. The aliens had superior firepower, superior technology, superior everything. But they were fighting a ghost army that struck from nowhere and vanished before reinforcements could respond. In the tunnels beneath what used to be Manhattan, Katie Morrison led her squad through darkness. 5 months ago, she'd been a high school history teacher explaining the Revolutionary War to bored teenagers. Now she was living it. Her flashlight beam cut through the blackness of the subway tunnel. Behind her, 6 fighters followed in silence. A mix of former soldiers, cops, and regular people who'd learned to fight because the alternative was slavery. They'd spent 3 weeks mapping these tunnels, learning every junction, every maintenance passage, every way in and out. Target's 200 yards ahead, whispered Danny Park, a former subway maintenance worker who knew these tunnels better than anyone alive. 3 guards at the surface entrance. Supply cache inside the old station. Katie checked her weapon, a modified Kazith plasma rifle that some genius engineer had figured out how to operate. It felt heavy and strange in her hands, but it worked. That's all that mattered. They moved fast. Up through a maintenance shaft, emerging behind the guards. The fight lasted 15 seconds. They grabbed weapons, ammunition, and medical supplies, then vanished back underground before the aliens even knew they'd been hit. That's 41 operations, Danny said as they made their way back to base. We've only lost 2 people. Katie nodded, but inside she remembered both names. Both faces. The price of freedom kept getting paid in blood, but they'd keep paying it as long as necessary. 700 miles south, in the ruins of Atlanta, Sergeant Tyler Jackson stood before 30 civilians in a bombed-out parking garage. Old folks, teenagers, office workers, a couple of college kids. None of them were soldiers. 2 months ago, none of them had fired a gun. Now they were learning to survive. "Listen up," Tyler said, holding a captured alien rifle. "These things are bigger than us. Stronger than us. Their armor's tougher. Their weapons hit harder. By every measure they should kick our butts in a straight fight." He saw fear in their eyes. Good. Fear kept you alive. But here's what they don't have. They don't know this planet. They don't know every back alley, every basement, every hiding spot. You do. You grew up here. This is your home. He loaded the rifle. And here's the secret. Their technology? It's not magic. It breaks. Their armor has weak points. Their shields fail. They bleed just like anything else. He spent the next 3 hours teaching them how to aim for the joints, how to set ambushes, how to disappear after striking, how to survive. Meanwhile, in a hidden laboratory beneath Seattle, Dr. Amy Wilson broadcast another lesson to resistance cells worldwide. Her encrypted videos had become required viewing for fighters everywhere. The neural pacifiers work on a specific frequency, she explained, showing diagrams on a whiteboard. We've built jammers from old radio equipment. Install them in your safe zones. Their mind control technology becomes useless. She held up a small device. Their shields? They stop energy weapons, but our old-fashioned bullets go right through. Sometimes primitive technology is the best technology. Thousands of fighters watched and learned. They adapted. They evolved. They turned every Kazith advantage into a vulnerability. On his flagship, Vexthor stared at tactical maps that showed his army's positions. He controlled the landing zones, the areas immediately around his ships, and nothing else. His supply lines were constantly attacked. His patrols disappeared. His soldiers were terrified to leave the safety of the ships. The casualty reports made him sick. This was supposed to be a simple harvest. Instead, his army was bleeding out on a primitive world that refused to die. Month 4. The moment humanity had been preparing for. For 8 weeks, resistance cells across the planet had been coordinating in secret. Encrypted messages passed through underground networks the Kazith couldn't detect. Plans were made. Weapons were stockpiled. Timing was synchronized down to the second. The aliens thought they were still hunting scattered survivors. They had no idea they were surrounded. Commander Jack Reynolds sat in a bunker beneath Washington, D.C., watching the clock tick toward dawn. He'd been Army Special Forces for 20 years before the invasion. Now he commanded the largest coordinated military operation in human history. Every resistance cell on Earth was ready, waiting for his signal. At exactly 0600 hours, he spoke 2 words into his communicator: go time. Across the planet, humanity emerged from the shadows. In Paris, Lieutenant Sophie Martin burst from the catacombs with 200 fighters behind her. The Kazith garrison near the Eiffel Tower never saw them coming. The aliens were eating breakfast, if you could call it that, when plasma fire lit up their compound. Sophie led the charge personally, her captured alien rifle blazing. The garrison fell in minutes. "Liberté!" someone shouted, and the cry spread through the fighters like wildfire. In Moscow, Captain Ivan Petrov commanded a battalion of former Russian soldiers, police officers, and citizens who'd learned to fight in subway tunnels and frozen streets. They hit the alien command post with everything they had: rockets, grenades, modified energy weapons. The Kazith tried to activate their defensive shields but found them mysteriously offline. Human hackers had been busy. Ivan watched the aliens scramble in confusion. "For Mother Russia," he growled, signaling the final assault. In Beijing, Sydney, Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Mumbai, London, in every major city simultaneously, humanity struck with coordinated fury. The Kazith had spread their forces thin, trying to control the planet. Now that decision became their death sentence. Each garrison found itself outnumbered, surrounded, cut off from support. The hunters had become the hunted. Commander Vexthor stood in his command center orbiting Earth, staring at screens that showed disaster unfolding everywhere at once. Red alerts flashed from every continent. His garrison commanders screamed for reinforcements. His casualty numbers climbed into the thousands within the first hour. "How are they doing this?" he shrieked. "They're primitives. They have no coordination." No. The door exploded inward. Sergeant Rachel Grant charged through the smoke, her squad right behind her. They'd infiltrated the command ship by hiding in a supply transport, waited for the right moment, and now they were here, inside the enemy's heart. All of them carried salvaged plasma weapons. All of them had lost people they loved to this invasion. Where's your pacification field now? Rachel snarled, aiming her weapon at Vexthor's head. Where's your superiority? The alien commander tried to reach for his sidearm. Rachel shot it out of his hand. Don't even think about it. In the skies over Nevada, Marine Captain Steve Walker led a squadron of F-16s that had been retrofitted with stolen Kazith technology. Human engineers had worked around the clock installing shield generators and plasma cannons on Earth's fighter jets. The aliens had air superiority. Past tense. All wings, this is Walker, he said over the radio. We've got bogies incoming. Let's show these bastards what human pilots can do. The dogfight that followed would be talked about for generations. Kazith fighters were faster, more maneuverable, equipped with better weapons. But they'd never faced pilots like Steve Walker and his squadron, men and women who'd trained their entire lives for aerial combat, who knew every trick in the book and had invented a few new ones. Steve locked onto an alien fighter and fired. The plasma bolt struck true, and the enemy ship spiraled into the desert below. Splash one, he called out. Around him, his squadron was racking up similar kills. The aliens' technological advantage was evaporating against human skill and desperation. In a bunker somewhere beneath Colorado, engineer Tom Sanders had been working on the same problem for 3 weeks straight, cracking the Kazith communications network. The aliens used sophisticated encryption, but Tom had once worked for the NSA. He knew encryption. He knew security. And he knew that every system had a weakness. At 0847 hours he found it. Got it, he shouted, his hands flying across the keyboard. Their fleet coordination is ours. He accessed the Kazith command channel and broadcast a single message in Galactic Common, using Vexthor's own command codes. Retreat. All forces withdraw immediately. Across the planet, Kazith soldiers received the order and tried to obey. They abandoned their positions and ran for their landing ships, desperate to escape the human onslaught. But humanity had been preparing for this too. Colonel James Mitchell stood on a rooftop in Los Angeles, watching through binoculars as a Kazith transport ship powered up its engines trying to lift off. The aliens had no idea that human saboteurs had been infiltrating their vessels for weeks, planting explosives, compromising fuel systems, weakening structural supports. The transport rose 50 feet into the air. Then its fuel tanks exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the dawn sky. Debris rained down on the landing pad. There would be no retreat. No escape. James lowered his binoculars and spoke into his radio with cold satisfaction. No one leaves. All across Earth, similar scenes played out. Ships exploded on launch pads. Transports crashed before reaching orbit. Escape pods were shot down. The Kazith had come to Earth expecting easy prey. Now they were trapped on a hostile world, hunted by an enemy that had learned every one of their weaknesses and exploited them all. The invasion was over. The cleanup was just beginning. 6 months after the Kazith fleet descended on Earth, the war was over. The last alien soldier had fallen 3 days ago in a bunker outside Tokyo. Engineers were still finding booby traps and automated defenses, but the fighting had stopped. Earth belonged to humanity again. The cost had been devastating. Millions dead. Entire cities reduced to rubble. Families torn apart. But humanity had won, and more importantly, they'd learned something crucial. They weren't alone in the universe, and not everyone out there was friendly. Admiral Christine Harper stood on the bridge of what used to be a Kazith harvest ship. The aliens had called it something unpronounceable. Now it was the UES Defiance, United Earth ship. The first of many. Human engineers had spent months crawling through every inch of captured vessels, taking them apart, figuring out how they worked, and putting them back together with improvements. The ship's bridge looked different now. Human control stations replaced alien ones. English labels covered Kazith symbols. The main view screen showed Earth below, beautiful and scarred, healing but forever changed. Status report, Christine said. FTL drive is operational, reported Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez. Weapon systems at 95%. Shields holding steady. We're ready, ma'am. Christine nodded. 6 months ago, she'd been commanding a Navy destroyer. Now she commanded a starship with technology that let her cross light years in hours. Earth had jumped forward centuries in technological development, all because they'd been forced to learn or die. In a laboratory facility deep underground, Dr. Andrew Foster put the finishing touches on humanity's message to the galaxy. 4 weeks, he'd been compiling everything: video footage from the invasion, tactical data from every major battle, casualty reports, technological analysis. The complete story of what happened when the Kazith came to Earth seeking slaves. We need to make sure they understand, Andrew said to his assistant, Dr. Jennifer Walsh. Not just what happened but why. Jennifer nodded, reviewing the data one more time. The tactical breakdowns alone were terrifying. Humanity had faced an enemy with superior technology and won through pure determination, creativity, and a refusal to surrender. The casualty ratios told a story that would make any military strategist pause. The Kazith lost their entire invasion force of over 50,000 soldiers. Earth lost millions of civilians but never lost the will to fight. It's ready, Jennifer confirmed. Once we broadcast this, the whole galaxy will know what happened here. In Geneva, President Maria Santos prepared to deliver humanity's first official message to the galactic community. The Provisional Earth government had formed 3 months ago, uniting nations under a single banner for the first time in history. Nothing brought people together like facing extinction. The camera crews were ready. Translators had converted her speech into Galactic Common and several other alien languages they'd learned from captured databases. This message would be transmitted to 100 star systems simultaneously, carried by modified Kazith communication arrays. Maria looked into the camera and began. My name is Maria Santos and I speak for the people of Earth. 6 months ago we learned we are not alone in the universe. We learned this when the Kazith Dominion invaded our world, intending to enslave our people. They came expecting an easy conquest. They found something else. She paused, letting her words sink in. We are humanity. For all of our recorded history we have fought among ourselves. We have made mistakes. We have struggled with violence and prejudice and hate. But when an outside force tried to enslave us, we remembered something important. We are all human. We are all from Earth. And we do not kneel to anyone. The video shifted, showing footage from the war. Kazith ships landing. Cities burning. And then, humanity fighting back. Soldiers charging alien positions. Engineers reverse engineering captured technology. Civilians turned fighters defending their homes. Maria's voice continued. Those who mistake our kindness for weakness make a fatal error. We do not seek conflict with the stars. We welcome those who come in peace. We are eager to learn, to trade, to become part of a larger galactic community. But we will not be victims. We will not be slaves. And we will not forgive those who would try to make us either. The video showed the final battles. Kazith forces being overwhelmed. Ships destroyed. The complete and total defeat of an invasion force. The Kazith came for slaves. They found only graves. Let this be a lesson and a warning. Earth is defended. Humanity is awake. Come in peace and find friends who will stand beside you. Come seeking to harm us and find an enemy that will never stop fighting. The transmission ended. Within hours, it reached the first alien outposts. Within days, it spread across the galactic network. Within weeks, the entire civilized galaxy had seen what happened when the Kazith tried to harvest Earth. The Dominion's response was immediate. All harvest fleets were recalled. Earth was marked with the highest threat designation, extreme hazard, avoid at all costs. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Kazith Dominion admitted defeat. Captain Brian Davis, formerly Private Jake Martinez's squad leader, now commanded Earth's first orbital defense station. He floated in zero gravity, watching construction crews assemble the massive weapons platforms that would guard humanity's home world. Beside him, Commander Patricia Wells reviewed deployment schedules. Both of them had been promoted after the war, given responsibilities they'd never imagined. We thought we were alone, Brian said quietly, watching Earth rotate below. We spent centuries looking at the stars, wondering if anyone else was out there. Patricia nodded. Now we know. And they know about us. Think they'll come back? Not the Kazith. But there are others. The galaxy's a big place. She smiled grimly. At least now we're ready. On Earth's surface, factories worked around the clock building warships from alien designs. Research facilities studied captured technology. Military academies taught the lessons learned from fighting the Kazith. Humanity had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. They had awakened to find themselves not alone in a vast universe, and that universe had just learned that Earth's children were not easy prey. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were human. And they would never be slaves to anyone.